Any escalation of this, I think, increases the risk that Iran will close the Straits of Hormuz. That would be very serious as far as the oil price is concerned. I mean, we could see easily talk about $200 a barrel, 300. I mean, just pluck figures out of the air.
This is Kaiser Johnson with Liberty and Finance, and this is the Miles Franklin Weekly Special for October 23rd through October 30th, 2023, while supplies last. This week we feature 3 different specials. 1 10th-ounce Gold Philharmonics at $30 over melt with a minimum order of 5. Half-ounce silver polar bears at $2.75 over melt with a minimum order of 100. And 1-ounce platinum maples at $80 over spot. The Austrian Philharmonic is the most popular bullion coin in Europe, and the gold 1 10th-ounce Philharmonic offers additional flexibility along with investor trust. With your order of 5 or more, you pay only $30 over melt. Next, the Royal Canadian Mint is one of the most trusted mints in the world, and the half-ounce polar bear is one of their most popular Call of the Wild coins. 1/2 ounce of 4/9 fine silver, it's available at just $2.75 over melt per coin with a minimum order of 100. Also from the Royal Canadian Mint, we have the 1-ounce platinum maple at just $80 over spot. Many consider platinum to be a highly undervalued metal at the moment, since over the last 30 years, platinum has generally been significantly more expensive than gold, but currently sits at less than half the spot price. Best of all, the 1-ounce platinum maple is just $80 over spot, giving you access to a premier coin in a premier metal at one of the lowest prices in 20 years. All of our specials this week are IRA eligible. And if you'd like to learn more about a precious metals IRA, call us and we'll be happy to help you in that process. To order our specials or any of the many other options we have available, call us at 1-888-81-LIBERTY. That's 1-888-815-4237. We're available after hours and on weekends, and we look forward to speaking with you.
Hey everyone, this is Elijah K. Johnson with Liberty and Finance. Back with us today is our good friend Alasdair Macleod with GoldMoney.com, incorporating Shift Gold. Alasdair, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me, Elijah.
Well, it's great to talk to you. And obviously, over the last few weeks, we've had tragic events in the Middle East. How is the financial system reacting to this? And what are some of the things that this situation could escalate? For example, the oil price, it seems like we may see increase substantially from here. So your perspective on the financial ramifications of this?
Yes, sure. The initial effect, I think, is worth noting, and that is that until this happened, everybody just took the view that higher interest rates was bad for gold. This is essentially a Keynesian approach, which doesn't understand that physical gold is money and doesn't understand that the dynamics, if you like, in terms of the interest or lease rates on gold are completely different from fiat currencies. And that comes, I think, partly because people seem to think that gold is no longer money and the dollar has replaced it, which of course is not true because the dollar is credit, just the same as any other currency. You've only got to look at a bank's balance sheet, a central bank's balance sheet, to see that that's the case. So that is an interesting change, I think, and something that's worth noting. And I mean, looking at it today, gold is, after a bit of a consolidation, seems to be moving up again at the same time as US Treasury yields are increasing. So this is a relationship which I think is confusing establishment investors and strategists and economists insofar as they're aware of it. As to the wider picture on this, or the geopolitical picture, I think we should be concerned. You mentioned the oil price, and I think that's extremely important. And there is no doubt that if this situation escalates and draws Iran into it, then there is that risk that America will respond and attack Iran. or at least try and make their life more difficult somehow. I mean, it's difficult to know quite how this will happen, but any escalation of this, I think, increases the risk that Iran will close the Straits of Hormuz. And that would be very serious as far as the oil price is concerned. I mean, we could see easily talk about $200 a barrel, 300. I mean, just pluck figures out of the air, because if they shut that the Strait of Hormuz, I mean, that's basically going to bottle up about 16% of global oil supplies. So the effect will be extremely deleterious, let's put it that way. The wider geopolitics is, I think, evolving rather. It's interesting that some of the wiser heads have suggested that really the only way this is going to be resolved is a two-state solution, accommodating the Palestinians. There is no sign from the Israeli side that they're prepared to accept this, nor, I must say, is there any sign from the Palestinian side, or rather the Hamas and potentially the Hezbollah side, that they would be prepared to accept this. I don't think it's impossible that mediation would occur to achieve this. What concerns me is that things have changed rapidly insofar as the Middle East, and particularly in the form of Saudi Arabia, which is really the economic powerhouse for the region, has turned its back on the West, because the West has turned its back on oil. I mean, we're now saying we don't want fossil fuels. So Mohammed bin Salman clearly understands that his nation's future is dealing with Russia and China and the Greater Asia, India, the billions of people there, rather than Europe and America, which he sees, well, I mean, they don't send anything to America anyway, but certainly the G7 countries are no longer the long-term partners, economic partners for Saudi Arabia. And I think this explains why Mohammed bin Salman has been far more welcoming to Vladimir Putin than he has to President Biden, who, quite frankly, when he goes to Saudi Arabia for meetings, he seems to get the cold shoulder. And this, I think, is very important, because the Americans, I think, are having to feel their way as to how relationships with the Middle East will evolve. I mean, one thing which everybody has noticed is that since America was pushed out, if you like, in terms of influence, peace has returned to the area, apart from this spat. Iran and Saudi Arabia are now talking to each other and exchanging diplomatic relations. You've got the Houthi problems in the Yemen seem to be being resolved. On top of that, the relationship between Saudi Arabia and Syria is being mended. The relationship with Qatar is probably being mended as well. The whole of the region, if you like, is now in effect saying, look, we are Arabs. We have got to work together. This is not something that the Europeans should really be involved with. And America's approach to this has really been one of divide and rule very much. And I think that's reflected in its backing for Israel and its condemnation, to a large extent, of the Palestinian cause. Now, I don't take sides in this at all, and the whole thing is terrible. I mean, it really is. But I'm just looking at the geopolitics of it. I mean, interestingly, both President Xi and Putin have been rather quiet on the subject, but they have made very simple statements to the effect that this has to be a two-state solution. And, both sides have got to recognize that. This is a message which is intended for two groups. Firstly, the Muslim world, which is 2 billion people, which is 2/7 of the world population, a lot of which are in Russian lands and also in the states, if you like, to the south of Russia. And the other group, of course, is what we now call the Global South, the non-aligned countries who see the opportunities of aligning themselves more with Russia and China. I mean, particularly China on a commercial basis, rather than America, but are probably wary of moving too quickly on this for the very simple reason that America has a reputation. I mean, I think you'd probably say, in fact, that America organizes regime change amongst the countries that don't kowtow to her. So this is something which is an evolving situation. But quite clearly, following the debacle of sanctions against Russia, the fact that America has reneged on her debt to Russia. I mean, by debt, I don't just mean US treasuries, of which Russia had virtually none, so far as I'm aware, but currency reserves. Currency is an obligation of the United States. It's a credit obligation, and that has been made worthless in the hands of the Russians. So America has reneged on its currency obligations. So this is something. It's all working against America. I mean, everything that she does or has been doing has basically been driving people out of her camp in towards the camp of the two big Asian hegemons. And I see this Israeli Hamas spat really doing the same sort of thing. And of course, at this stage, the unknown is whether Hezbollah will get involved. I find it increasingly difficult to see how they won't get involved. I hope I'm wrong in that, because if they get involved, that definitely does bring Iran into play. Not just, saying things, but actually doing things. So I think that's where it is. And the other aspect of this is that it's removed attention from the Ukraine. And the Ukraine, I think, is sort of being quietly dropped by the West, if I can put it that way, because obviously it's not gone favorably for NATO. And NATO, I think, would like to back out of that situation now. This, in that sense, is a God-given opportunity for NATO to save face because, Ukraine's out of the headlines. Nobody's watching Ukraine. Ukraine doesn't matter anymore. It's all Israel. It's all Israel. And we're supporting Israel and we're trying to, be reasonable about it, but condemning the Arab terrorists at the same time. So you can see we're taking sides in this. So this is the new cause belli, as it were. I think that has enormous implications for the situation in Europe, because as we back out from the Ukrainian situation, I think Russia will feel that it's winning, insofar as really what it wants to do is to drive America out of Europe. We're a long way from that, from Russia's point of view. But if this is yet another defeat, in effect, for America, even though it's not a defeat that is being in the press because of the Israeli-Hamas situation, nonetheless, I think it would be a victory for Russia in terms of what she is trying to achieve. So there are wheels within wheels in all this. And I think it would be a mistake to just sort of go gung-ho, which most people in this country are gung-ho supporting Israel. But again, there are big demonstrations for the Palestinians in places like London, in Europe. And of course, we're condemning it. But I think it just shows how extensive the feeling is in the Arab world. And that is something we cannot ignore. That's something that is important to bear in mind.
Now, when it comes to the gold price, it seems like we have seen a dramatic increase over the past few weeks, about 10%, it seems like. Your perspective on this? I know when the Ukraine war broke out, we saw a similar bump in the price that was short-lived, right? So your perspective on this recent run-up in gold, and do you think it'll continue from here?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, it's war risk, it's all those things. But I think there are other things going on in the background. I mean, we see that central banks are still trying to mop up the markets, trying to take any physical gold they can get hold of. Last month, according to World Gold Council figures, central banks bought another 77 tons. Now, that might not seem a lot in the overall scheme of things, but central banks are just one of the buyers in this situation. There is very big money, in my opinion, in places like the Middle East, which is moving into gold because I hate to say this, but many, many years of bossing the Arabs around, we are not popular in the Middle East. I mean, Americans are very unpopular. We are probably tolerated, if I can put it that way. The Europeans, they've never really been into it. It's really been America and us. So I just think that I just think that the demand side is really ramping up. There is another aspect to this, and that is back in, I think it was in June, the Chinese government instructed the state-owned or state-controlled banks to offer facilities to account holders to swap deposits into gold. And the thing that's interesting is that this is angled at even the poorest in society, the poorest who have bank accounts, obviously. So why is China doing this? I mean, it's not as if China is she's got no interest in ramping up the price of gold, as it were. I mean, okay, in my opinion, she's probably got about 30,000 tons, could be more, hidden in various accounts like, the People Liberation Army, the Communist Party, the youth wing of the Communist Party, and so on. Hidden, if you like, from the reserves which are declared on the balance sheet of the People's Bank of China. I think that one thing that could be the case is that China analyzes the situation just the same as I do. We sit here and try and work it out, and you as well. And I think that China has probably come to the conclusion that the whole of the Western-based, the G7 credit system is becoming destabilized. Now, just think, you have central banks who are all deeply in negative equity. Putting it less politely, they're bust. These are the institutions who we expect to if you like, provide some sort of guarantee for the integrity of the commercial banking network. Much of the commercial banking network is bust as well, but, we do things like we say, oh, you don't need to show your bond losses on a mark-to-mark basis. And the Fed has gone around and said, tell you what, we'll take in your bonds at full face value, even though they're only worth 70 cents on the dollar, and we will give you cash on that basis. We'll lend you cash on that basis for a year. How about that? And then for goodness sake, don't say that you've got problems. Don't advertise that you've got problems. So you can see there's a big cover-up operation going on. As well as that, government finances are completely shot. The budget deficit for the last fiscal year in America, which ended at end September, as I'm sure most of your viewers are aware, turned out to be, I think, about 1.6 trillion. I mean, it was only back in May that the Congressional Budget Office was forecasting a budget deficit of 1.35 trillion. And it works out at 1.63 trillion. I mean, these figures are going very, very wrong. And of that, something like 845, or is it 880, something like that, $billion is interest payments. Now, that was at an average interest rate of less than 3%. And now what have we got? We've got, funding at current rates, the US Treasury is having to pay over 5%, or certainly on long term, and short term, it's slightly less on the 10-year. And that is absolutely ruinous for the government finances, particularly when something like $7.6 trillion worth of US government has to be rolled in this fiscal year, plus the current deficit being financed, much of which is interest cost. Now, I would not be surprised to see that interest cost in the current year climbing towards 1.5 trillion. And I would not be surprised to see on that basis the budget deficit, particularly given that we've got a slowing down of the economy. We're going to have less tax revenue. We're going to have more welfare costs. I can see that ballooning out to over $3 trillion. In other words, double the current level, more or less double the current level. So all that's got to be financed. And guess what? I mean, you've been depending on foreigners to finance it. And the two largest holders, China and Japan, have turned sellers. So who's going to buy this stuff? I mean, with continually rising bond yields, I actually think it's unmarketable until it gets to a point where all the expectation, if you like, of higher bond yields is taken out of the market. We saw something like this back in the 1970s with the UK gilt market, gilts being government securities. When we had the Grand Old Duke of York strategy, as we called it. There's a nursery rhyme. The Grand Old Duke of York, he had 10,000 men. He marched them up the top of the hill, in other words, the interest rate hill, and marched them down again. And this tactic was used by the Bank of England to clear the deficit, financing of the deficit. And it had to do this 2 or 3 times. And consequently, I mean, we saw gilts with coupons of 15, 15.25%, and 15.5%. Now, imagine what that would do to US government finances. I mean, I'm not forecasting that, but I wouldn't be surprised to see that as a result of this current situation. And of course, this also means that the value of equities is way out of line with developments in the bond market, way out of line. I'll be putting out a chart. In fact, I did it on Twitter, but I'm putting it out in an article which I'm releasing tomorrow, which shows how the inverse correlation between long bond yields and the S&P 500 index has evolved really since 1985. And it quite clearly shows that there's a huge valuation gap now, which potentially could easily drive the S&P down to under 1,000, easily drive it to under 1,000. So this again gives us other problems, because the entire banking system, of course, has loans, leases, and it has collateral, and that collateral value is going down. We're already aware of the collateral problems in the commercial real estate market. And, it's all very well saying that, as in the past, okay, something goes wrong, right? This you can clear it at a discount of, say, 30% or something like that. But there are no buyers when interest rates are continuing to rise. So what does the Fed do? Everybody thinks that the Fed can just cut interest rates. Well, I suppose they can. But if they did that, they would collapse the dollar. It's as simple as that. And what would all the foreign money, some 32 trillion of it, sitting in US assets, plus all the dollars outside the US banking system, in the banking and shadow banking system in foreign banks. I mean, that is estimated by the Bank of International Settlements to be in the region of 90 trillion. I mean, we're talking huge, huge overhang, which is built up in dollars, really since the Second World War, and more particularly since the dollar since Nixon suspended the Bretton Woods Agreement back in 1971. There are very, very big forces likely to be unleashed here. So getting back to the point about gold, one could be tempted to think that this Israeli problem would probably produce the same outcome for gold as the Ukrainian situation. In other words, you have this sort of panic dies down, gold price goes down. Possibly. But I think what we are seeing, and I think my reading of the Chinese approach to this confirms it, and that is the whole of the G7 credit system is becoming very unstable. And the only safety for anyone trying to preserve their capital, preserve their wealth, is to have it in real money, which is still, despite all the propaganda coming out of America since 1971, it is still physical gold, gold coin, gold bullion. That is real money. The rest is credit, and it is credit that is being destabilized. Anything that is priced in credit is destabilized. So these are very, very scary times.
Now, when it comes to what is happening with gold, you mentioned how the stock market is diverging from the bond market, and it could fall significantly from here based on what we've seen in the past. Interestingly enough, gold is also holding up while bonds are collapsing. So why do you think that is? And why won't, I guess, in this situation, gold collapse as well? It seems like maybe gold is acting in a different way and diverging for some other reason.
Well, I think, I mean, so in the language of investment managers or hedge fund managers or zero hedge or whatever, the fear trade, I think, is migrating from bonds into gold and also Bitcoin. I mean, Bitcoin has soared in recent days, and people don't really know why, but I think that's a fair trade, really, by people who actually don't understand that Bitcoin is completely worthless. But, let them play. So I think the speculation has gone into Bitcoin, but the valuation of currencies against gold is really the thing that you need to look at. And a rising gold price isn't actually a rising gold price. It's a falling value for the currencies that you're measuring it in. And that, I think, one has to remember. I think that it is interesting that we have returned to the situation where we had in the 1970s, where the relationship between bond yields and gold was higher bond yields, higher gold. I mean, we went into the 1970s with a Fed funds rate around about 6%. It subsequently dipped to about 3.25%, I think, 1971, 72 maybe. And gold was $35. We came out of that decade with gold looking $850 on one fix. And the Fed funds rate was like 19. So the idea that bond yields and gold are inversely related is completely wrong. I mean, and there are very, very good reasons why that is the case. If you worry about the stability of credit, then you go for gold. If you're not worried about the stability of credit, then you go for bonds. I mean, it's actually as simple as that. So that, I think, is the answer to your question. Most people, they're all Keynesian in the markets. There are a few monetarists knocking around. But basically, they actually think that from their portfolio point of view, holding gold means that you are sacrificing income compared with holding US Treasuries. And that's the level of thought.
It seems like if you look at the traditional financial planners, that's probably their thought. But if you look at what major nations are doing right now, for example, China accumulating gold, and obviously we've talked about this before on the show with you, but I believe it would be September actually marked the 11th consecutive month that China has been accumulating more and more gold. Your perspective on that, and any more thoughts about them developing a gold currency, maybe with the BRICS or on their own, and remonetizing gold?
Well, yes, it's a very good point because, people must have noticed, but they perhaps haven't thought it through, that central banks are very keen to acquire gold, which they see as having no counterparty risk. And they've been accelerating their gold ownership. I mean, outside the G7, this is, the G7 nations basically have just sat pat on what they've got or what they say they've got. But all the others have been obviously running scared and adding to their gold reserves. The fact that they do this tells us that central bankers, whatever they say in public, actually do realize that gold is money and the rest is credit. So that's why they're doing it. When it comes to China's policy on gold, I think they differ very much from the Russians, who I'll come to in a moment. China takes a very long view. It doesn't want to be blamed for destabilizing other places and so on and so forth. And if you look at how she has responded to the various sort of trade tariffs and other attacks, attempts to try and stop China develop her technology and all this sort of stuff, you can see that she hasn't actually retaliated in any meaningful way when she could have done. She's just sort of rather like Muhammad Ali in that one of those great fights. Was it the Rumble in the Jumble? I can't remember. He just let his opponent, who I think was Foreman, just punch away, and until he was just completely exhausted. And that's the Chinese approach. They've been around 3,000 years. They have a very long view. And this is just one episode in their long history. So they're not going to go out and upset everything. And I think this is why the new BRICS gold-backed currency, which was really devised by Russian interests, wasn't on the BRICS agenda in Johannesburg back in August. China effectively vetoed it. Now, I also know that the Indians were not at all keen, partly because they haven't really got any significant amount of gold. And also the Keynesian government are very Keynesian in their the Indian government are very Keynesian in their economic approach. So the Indians have got a bit of a problem because, they're in the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. They see everybody around them as accumulating gold. They don't believe in it, but they can't afford to ignore it. So, they would on margin like to acquire a bit more gold. They think it's absolutely ridiculous that their population runs out and buys gold rather than having rupees. But if you look at what happens to the value of rupees measured in gold, you get a pretty good idea who's sensible in this, and it's not the government, that's for sure. But when it comes to the more aggressive party on this, I think we're looking at Russia. It was Russia that pushed this idea, supported by various other countries, incidentally, but it didn't, if you like, cut the final draft. And I think that Russia is being put into a position with her own currency being undermined, her own bond yields looking like 13.5%, which is ruinous, really. How can you run a developing economy on that sort of interest rate? An interest rate really that fails to protect the currency, because the currency has declined from, I think it got down to up, as it were, to about 60 to the dollar, and it's now down to close to 100 to the dollar, 1 cent, 1 ruble. This has been a very weak currency over the last 18 months. And that's a situation which is not going to be reversed with higher oil prices. I know lots of people think that higher oil prices is good for the ruble, but just look at the history of it. The fact of the matter is that in a fiat currency system, the dollar is king. And, putting money to one side, genuine money, gold on one side, if you're operating in a fiat currency system and things start going wrong, what do? You go and buy dollars. You don't buy rubles. It doesn't matter whether, what the trade surplus, trade deficit, whatever is. It really doesn't matter in this currency sense. So I think that the Russians understand this. I know that they have other gold other than has been declared as the central bank's gold reserves, which are somewhere over 2,000 tons now. They've got a further 10,000, maybe 12,000 tons in two other accounts, which can be mobilized as reserves should they wish to put the ruble back onto a gold standard. Remember, the ruble was on its own gold standard until Khrushchev took it off. I think that was back in the late 50s. So this is something which the Russians actually do understand. And if you read the writings of Sergei Glaziev, who's one of the chief economic advisors to Putin, some of his writing I could have written. His understanding of the importance of gold, securing the value of credit, I think is far greater than anything we see in the West. So I think Russia might be minded to try and protect her currency by going back onto a gold standard. The immediate benefit would be that the interest rates, the bond yields, the rate at which developing businesses can borrow credit in order to fund production, fund business, whatever, would drop from the current level of about 13, 14%. And, you'd be seeing it going down well below 10. In the longer term, you could expect it to stabilize at sort of, around about 3%, 3.5%, something like that. That is the goal, which would encourage the Russians to go for a gold standard. And if I was in Putin's shoes, given that he wants to be, if you like, go down in history as the greatest man since Peter the Great, if you like, then that is the route he should take, because the economic benefits would be enormous. Because one thing he needs to do, I think, is to stop selling the family silver, and all those wonderful commodities that Russia seems to have in abundance, and relying on that, if you like, to support the economy. No, don't do that. Let's have an industrial revolution. It's then in line with what China is doing with the rest of Asia and Africa and Latin America. And Russia would be an absolute powerhouse. And furthermore, she would certainly attract, as a partner in this, Germany, which has, unlike all the other European Union members, followed a far better monetary course, credit course. I mean, she's, the debt to GDP, government debt to GDP is about 60%, whereas, you're looking at Italy, 144%. Greece, 200 and something percent. Well, no, it's come down to about 180 or something. And Portugal is way up there as well. I mean, France is way up there as well. This is Germany is really the only sensibly solvent nation within the group, and she's being bled by all the others. And I think that I think that a lot of German business would very much like to have the border open with Russia, because there's just so much opportunity there. And I think that's probably where everybody's going to go at the end of the day, if we can dismantle NATO, if we can get this sort of interfering in everybody else's business type meme actually killed. So interesting times.
Very interesting times, and obviously distressing for many people around the world here. Your perspective, I guess, before we let you go, any last thoughts? I know tensions are escalating, it seems like. How can people, prepare for all of this? Because it doesn't seem like things are heading necessarily in a good direction.
Well, the only way in which you can prepare, unless you're an optimist and think that this will all sort itself out and bond yields will fall and equities will continue to rise. Why? Because everybody wants them to rise. The Fed has a policy of ensuring that financial assets continue to rise. The banks want these things to rise. Surely they're powerful enough to do it. If you believe that, then good luck to you. If, on the other hand, you think there is something in what I say about the instability of credit, the growing instability of credit, then on that basis, you've got to get at least some of your wealth out of credit. And the only way you do that is to get it into real money, which is gold. It's basically gold. I mean, in the past, it's also been silver. The days of any silver standard, of course, are long, long gone. So it's really gold. And you can speculate in silver, I suppose, which in theory might give you a bit of leverage. But we're talking about something which is not really investment. It's not really trading. It's protection. You will buy gold so that either you will use it, you will spend it, or alternatively, once the whole thing is over, credit has been resolved somehow, then you will cash in your gold for assets of some sort. That's the way in which you will survive this. And also bear in mind that you're going to have an awful lot of relatives, friends, people in your community who will have not gone down this route. It's going to be very, very tough for everybody. If you're lucky enough to have taken the opportunity to acquire some real money, and you're in a position where you can survive this more than your friends and other members of the community, then you may indeed have to help those in your community, because the government is not going to be able to do it. I mean, we're looking at a complete collapse of government finances, in effect. So this is not a nice thing at all. It's a huge, great evolution. I mean, what I would say is that one aspect which can give us hope is that China and Russia are insulating themselves from this folly of ours. And so over half the world will continue, particularly if they protect their currencies with gold, they will continue. And that gives us hope, because there will be people to buy our stuff, if you like. There will be people to deal with. We will be able to buy commodities because there will be demand for commodities continuing. So it's not all black, but I think the sort of conventional G7 Western investment meme about investment and all the rest of it, I mean, that's going to be completely ruinous, in my view.
All right. Well, Alasdair, we really appreciate your time today, as always. If our viewers are interested in learning more, I know you write articles frequently. Can you tell our viewers where they can find those and any of the other work that you do?
Yep. GoldMoney.com. Also, for the moment, it's being published on Schiff, first on Thursdays. So this is being recorded on a Wednesday. Tomorrow, my article will be all about credit. What credit actually is, because so few people really do understand it. And I think it's desperately important in these unstable circumstances that people do get a grasp of what credit is and why it's going wrong. So that's published on Thursday, and then probably on GoldMoney on the following Monday. I also do a market report, which goes out on Shift Gold first. That's on Friday. By the time it gets onto the GoldMoney website, the moment has passed, I think, as far as market reports are concerned. So if you want a market report, that would be the place to go. I just wish everybody good luck. I mean, for goodness sake. I mean, I know that you're now in the gold coin retail business. I think both you and GoldMoney, Shift Gold, I think have a mission to just try and help people through what I think is going to be very, very difficult times.
Fantastic. Well, once again, thank you, Alasdair, for your time today. Our viewers always, your interviews are much anticipated from our viewers. So thank you so much for your time, and God bless.
Well, thank you very much for having me on, Elijah.
Miles Franklin Precious Metals is one of America's oldest and most trusted bullion dealers. Miles Franklin is A+ rated and accredited by the Better Business Bureau, licensed and bonded, and has 0 complaints ever registered. Here at Liberty and Finance, we are licensed brokers with Miles Franklin. To order, simply call us discuss your needs, and we can let you know our live inventory, prices, and availability, and lock in your order over the phone. Once your order is locked, the price is held for you regardless of market fluctuations, and the metals are reserved for you awaiting your settled payment. Within 1 business day of ordering, you will receive an email invoice detailing the order and payment instructions. Miles Franklin accepts payments by bank wire, ACH or electronic check, money order, check mailed priority mail, and cryptocurrency. The fastest forms of payment are bank wire and cryptocurrency. Upon settled payment, metals will ship out within 3 to 5 business days. You will receive tracking information via email. Domestic shipping charges are $15 for any order under 500 ounces of silver or 10 ounces of gold. For orders larger than that, domestic shipping is free. The package will be boxed, fully insured, and labeled discreetly, with no indication of the contents inside. For your privacy, the name Miles Franklin will not even be on the package. To talk to myself, Kaiser, my brother Elijah, or my father Dunnigan, call 1-888-81-LIBERTY. That's 1-888-815-4237.